Hello, and welcome to a very special episode of Phoenix Cinema Podcast. I'm Chris Austin.
And I'm Luke Parker.
And the reason this is a special episode is because we have a very special guest. And that guest is a writer and director, most notably having written the Academy Award-nominated Polish film Corpus Christi, which I love. Everyone, please welcome Mateusz Pacewicz to the Phoenix Cinema Podcast. Mateusz, hello. Oh no. He's gone. Oh, he's here.
Yeah.
Did you hear
back.
anything?
I heard a very nice introduction. Then it got cut, but it's okay. I deduced the rest of it.
Perfect. I'll just go from my final statement, which was Mateusz, hello.
Hi guys, it's really cool to be here with you.
Thanks for joining us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for giving us your time today.
No worries.
Honestly, I'd love to go right back to the beginning. So, were you born in Poland?
Yeah, I'm born and raised in Warsaw. Spent most of my life living in actually one district in Warsaw, in Mokotów. Now it's a little bit more complicated because for a while now we've been living between Warsaw, Poland, and Bordeaux, in France. So right now I am in Bordeaux because my wife is French, and we kind of move every few months with freelance jobs. It's possible, and that's really cool.
Nice.
So it has a lot of upsides. So basically today I'm definitely not in Warsaw. I spent the morning at the ocean surfing. So
Perfect. Nice.
Speaking of surfing, have you heard about that documentary series 100 Foot Wave?
I'm aware of its existence. I haven't seen it, but I'm aware of the thing.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. It's fascinating. I mean, I'm not a surfer myself, so even more I'm fascinated by surfers.
I'm definitely not 100 feet
foot wave surfing. Yeah.
No, that's not my jam. That's not my kink.
Seems quite scary.
I'm really good with 1 meter. 1 meter is that's my zone of comfortable discomfort.
Absolutely. Stick with what you're comfortable. Yes.
Yeah. So perhaps that's why I'm not necessarily drawn to this extreme sport aspect of surfing, because I know that it can get into that area, but for me it's enough if it's between 1 meter and 1.5 meters.
That's thrilling enough. Yeah. Were you born into I was just going to say being born in Poland, were you born into a creative family? Any writers or directors in the family?
Journalists, and how do I put it nicely? I would say failed artists sometimes. No, I'm kidding. But people, they had ambitions all around me, and parts of the family actually, yes, more distant parts of the family. But I've never had not in my immediate family. I've never had anybody who worked the way I work. So that's quite interesting, because also it led to some friction and conflicts and misunderstandings. It was okay. It was not, it was not hardcore at any point. But they really struggled with my, especially with my obsession with the first film I've written, so Corpus Christi, because it took 9 years of me writing it. So
wow.
For my parents, it was after 6 years they were really, I guess, worried about the son who seemed delusional a bit. And also I dropped out of university in a way after finishing BA, and since they come from this also atheist, which is interesting because I was very religious as a child. But it was this kind of almost rebellion against atheist parents. So this is the complete opposite of the usual Polish experience. I don't know how it is, in your social surroundings. But my story was definitely, when I sometimes tell it to my friends, that is like completely non-relatable. Like nothing is relatable in this aspect
Right.
of religion. But anyways, they were a bit worried about me spending so much time of working on different versions and various completely different versions of screenplay, different drafts of treatments and synopsis and all of this. And then obviously they supported me in it and stuff. But there was a moment I remember when I dropped out of the university and didn't have a master's degree. And for them, since they come from this very intelligentsia, academic journalism and social activism, like you need to be educated and you need to do important things for the society in a way. So they were worried a little bit, I guess, at the beginning, but then now they are very...
After the Oscar nomination, did you call them and be like, still worried?
In your face, parents. No, it was not. I guess that we made amends around this subject way earlier, and I think that it's that's the usual thing, that the reception of the film, of course, was an really important aspect of my life, but for me, in a way, it was way more important. Like I would say 3 or 4 years before the coming out of the two films that I've written first, because I was writing first Corpus Christi and then The Hater kind of simultaneously for a few years. So more important than the reception and all of that, for me, was the moment when I actually got my first deal. I was making money. So in the context of also talking to my parents, and not necessarily because of the money, but I guess that they saw that, okay, this is something that is also beginning of a career, that it is also, his way of becoming an adult in a way, even though I was quite young and they maybe didn't really have much of expectations around that. But definitely this was a big step for me. I remember feeling, the first money I ever made on writing, which now seems ridiculously small, but back then it was like, wow.
Yeah. God, I can only imagine.
Yeah. Going back a bit then, I'm very curious, you having grown up in Poland, like what kind of films, literature, what kind of stories you were growing up with that kind of might have inspired you in your career?
I was a very pretentious, arrogant teenager, so I watched a lot of lofty cinema, like Haneke, Bergman, von Trier, like things like this, and I would watch it on repeat, and we pretend that I'm getting a deeper meaning.
We all had that phase, don't worry. We all had that phase.
Yeah, and I feel that it's funny because nowadays sometimes I rewatch one of those films. I'm like, it's so intense. Like, how could I rewatch? I don't know, Funny Games, for example. Now it's like cannot even watch it, But back then I was like sitting,
yeah.
In a way, emotionally detached, which is funny because I think that it kills any cinematic instinct when you're too over intellectual about your work.
Sure.
So I definitely had this vice, but I also loved some of the Polish literature. That I think inspired me in a way, maybe more than Polish cinema, although Polish cinema can also be great. It's just that I think that Polish cinema, it's too big of a category, obviously, but it has some tendencies. And I realized recently that the thing that is still a little bit missing in Polish cinema in comparison with Polish literature is this mix of dramatic and tragic with comedic. Like the Polish cinema that I know is mostly very serious. Like there's not much room for humor, and there are some exceptions. from this rule, but overall the big tradition is of cinema that is very serious. And when it comes to literature, for example, I've thought recently about Witold Gombrowicz, who is a quite well known in some contexts, but sadly not enough, I think, writer who basically grappled with ideas that are very important and even fundamental, I would say, in my filmmaking obsessions, because he was also like obsessed with how we all basically pretend and how we all lie and how we deceive and how we're never truly ourselves. But he's written a lot of funny yet serious literature on that subject, and I think that his concepts influenced my perception of what cinema can be a lot, even though he was not into cinema at all. I think he didn't care, but yeah, definitely that. But when it comes to, there are some Polish films that I also loved always, and usually the more trippy, weirder, slightly psychedelic films, for example, from Poland. There's one that I highly recommend that Martin Scorsese also loves, which is called the Saragossa Manuscript, and it's quite a trip. You should
I've never heard of it.
You should look into screening it in your cinema, because it was a hit amongst the hippies in the 70s, and that's how Martin Scorsese also discovered it, because it's basically this story inside the story inside the story trip. So you get lost in the levels of storytelling. But it was shot entirely in Poland, next to a city of Łódź, in an industrial communist world, but in a hall, like, obviously, and they created some kind of a Spain from the 17th century Spain in it. So and they all talk in Polish, but it's supposed to be in Spanish. It's a real trip, and that
sounds like a
adaptation
trip.
of
Yeah.
book. This was one of the films of my childhood, in a way, even though there are a lot of titties in it. I rewatched it with my wife, French wife, recently, and I thought, oh, this is the film of my childhood. It's like every scene. And I was like, yeah, that's not how I remember it. So.
Yeah.
Also, like,
that's
gratuitous nudity,
Yeah.
completely nuts. The good old sexist. Maybe let's do this scene without a bra, and I don't even know why. It doesn't serve any purpose.
Well, you said Martin Scorsese recommended it, and I was thinking, yeah, I'll get to it. Then you mentioned the titties, and I was like, that's going straight to the top of the list.
I know how to sell murky, strange, dubious Polish cinema.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like a trip. I've been trying to kind of expose myself to more Polish cinema over the last few years. I haven't really got any deeper than like Kieślowski.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious if there's anyone like you'd throw out there to really recommend.
Actually, with Kieślowski, it's quite interesting, because I just realized that he lived in the same small tenant building as we.
Oh wow!
All of our lives, so like until he passed away. But so I have some memories about him coming late at night, but I was a kid, because he died.
That's crazy.
1999, and I was 5 when he passed away. But I have some of my early memories are of this like scary, kind of strange man who would come sometimes and ask to borrow some bread late at night. And years later, I connected the dots and realized that it was Kieślowski, and his late wife. No, the widow of Kieślowski, like Maria Kieślowska, still lives in the building. So when I lived still there with my parents and stuff, I would also, sometimes interact with her and stuff. She's very, very nice, and takes care of the overall of the legacy, I would say, of him.
That's awesome.
That's amazing.
But anyways, Kieślowski for sure is a great filmmaker to watch. For me personally, he's represents a lot what is great in Polish cinema, but it's not always what I'm personally drawn towards the most. Sure. There is a director that's called Andrzej Munk, who made a great comedy. I think it's called Tough Luck or Bad Luck. Polish title is Zezowate Szczęście. It's an interesting and bigger subject that could, be for many, many episodes. But when you think about it, we had a lot of also Polish Jewish filmmakers who went to Hollywood and 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s and stuff. So, a lot of them, for example, identified as Polish, right? More than Jewish in a way, because it was not a nationality. But
sure.
So there is also this. Back then they felt they were Polish Jews who just went to the US. And so like when you actually read about the beginnings of Hollywood, one could say that half of the Hollywood was just Polish Jews.
Right.
And it's also because at first cinema was a job that was kind of beneath the Americans of other descent who felt that only women or immigrants can get into something as in a way working class and popular class as cinema. So it's also interesting that there was more room in a way for women, for example, at first, because men from Harvard would not become directors or screenwriters. But anyways. I also like some of the films of Andrzej Wajda, and I recommend them a lot. He won an Oscar for the whole life, basically, like the legacy Oscar before he.
Oh yeah.
Like an honorary, or I don't remember, like lifetime achievement Oscar. And Pawlikowski is also great, obviously, but probably this I don't need to tell you. Although also not comedic, like that's. I'm trying to think of filmmakers from Poland, and I'm struggling sometimes because right now I'm more in a phase of comedy. But Billy Wilder, technically from today's Poland,
is he?
Yeah, he was born in what today is Poland, but back then it was during the partitions. There was
I didn't know that. Wow.
Controlled by the Austro-Hungarian. So, long story short, there were many filmmakers of Polish descent that hit exactly what I've been looking for recently in cinema, which is a mix of funny and sad, I guess, and touching, but. Overall, the Polish cinema is also growing very, very rapidly now. Still developing, I think, very nicely after the weird phase. The worst phase, I think, was between communism and now. So, like the beginning of the post-communist capitalist transformation was really the hardest for storytelling in cinema, because it was, I think that. Before there was censorship, and censorship, as in any totalitarian state, censorship, I think, leads to creativity, because you need to find your ways around it. You still want to tell your story, but you need to be very smart, because if you fail at making a metaphor, you could either go to jail or maybe lose the funding or something. So you need to be really smart about how you tell what you actually want to say, but without telling. So cinema was great, I think, for that. And that's why we had a lot of Kieślowski's films, Wajda's films, but many others. Holland's films, Agnieszka Holland also were great in that. And now I think that we have kind of learned the new ways of expression without this particular censorship that was very clear and organized and centralized. And now it's more working with, of course, when you make a film, you still, in a way, grapple with constraints that are in some ways ideological and depending on whether it's a platform or we also live in a capitalist society, all of that. So you still work with constraints, right? But it's no longer a centralized censorship. So I think that Polish people also needed just to find new ways of expression in that new situation. And for me, what was in between was usually artistically the worst. So like 15 years between the collapse of communism and what happened later.
That's interesting.
Between all these filmmakers and the author of the writer that you mentioned, which one of those was kind of the spark that made you want to become a film writer? Or did you want to become a film writer? Did you want something else initially? Okay.
Yeah, that's the thing. I never had the. In general, I wanted to become a writer for sure. In my, fueled by hubris and self-inflated sense of ego or something. Yeah, but today I look at that kid, of course, with some kind of warmth and understanding. But I really had this thing that I was like waiting to be discovered, even though I did kind of nothing. I wrote some bad poetry, and I was like, why hasn't the world discovered me yet? And I think that going from I want to be a writer, I want to be an artist, to I will just work on this one story that I really got into, and I felt that it might be actually a film story, and then I started and going into kind of a film school, but without a film school, just no film school of writing a film that with enough patience that you will actually learn how to do it on the job, and with also the, I guess, social privilege that I had of not having to go to work or military or whatever at 18, which is, we forget sometimes when we live in Europe and stuff, how great we have it, that we can sometimes, look for ourselves after finishing high school for a while or something. But anyways, I think that going from, I have to be an artist to, I will just work on this story and we'll see what happens. And it feels like a screenplay. Okay, I'm going to write a screenplay. I'm going to learn how to write a screenplay. I'm going to try this, try that. No, blah, blah, blah. This was quite beneficial because it made me also go from I want to be somebody to I'm just doing something. And I think that in creative work, it's really important to always want to seek the activity and not the role or the projection about the role that is attached to it, because sometimes the role and the activity have almost nothing in common, right? Because for example, we don't actually see the authors, whether in cinema, screenwriters or directors, or in novels. We don't see the authors while they're working. We see them at meetings, or we read interviews with them, right? Or we see them as in cinema. And I also experienced this quite a lot, I would say, for a writer. All of the galas, the festivals, and all of the awards, and everybody who suddenly wants to be your best friend, and all the messages and all of this nowadays with the social media. And I think that this has nothing to do with the job. Like there's nothing in common between the job and the role. So I think that it was beneficial for me to kind of drop my dreams of becoming someone and more get into a project that have worked really, really surprisingly well, I will say. For a debut, I was like, I'm not, I don't think that this is in my expectations or dreams.
Yeah. I mean, if you expected that, like you said, that is, you wouldn't have been present in doing the work, right?
Yeah. I think that this was. Actually, I was an arrogant kid before, but I have to say that starting this whole long journey of working on Corpus Christi, and then also the other film also took 4 years of writing and rewriting, and it was very stressful sometimes because these were like very important also political questions, and the Hater, the other film that I've written, and I think that it was good that it was all mostly a lesson in patience and humility, that in comparison with my previous phase, teenage, so adolescent phase, it was way more mature, I would say. And obviously not always, and there are still weird moments, as in any, I think, bumpy road, and making a film is always a bumpy road. But overall, I feel that I've learned a lot also about humanity and cooperation and not only in creative terms, but in general.
Well, yeah, let's.
You mentioned earlier that Corpus Christi took. Did you say it took you 6 years to write?
Nine.
Yeah, 9. So was that one of your very first projects? And I'm just curious in general why it took that long, basically, to put it bluntly.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what I was about to ask. Thank you.
Well, I would say that it took that long because it's had to be good. I don't know. And then also it had to also get made. And the first 6 years were probably the least productive years, even though it is the years in which I've written the most. But in the sense that there was a lot of work done, but none of it good. So I was just, lost in the forest, in the woods, and trying different directions to get somewhere with this story. All I knew is that it's gonna be fake priest, and basically that's kind of it. The rest was the result of inspirations, research, new real story of a fake priest that happened that inspired me, but then dropping it and going into another one and trying to take from this as inspiration. But it was all very, very chaotic. And I think that these chaotic 6 years were actually perhaps the time that I wouldn't spend now. And now that I start, I don't know, now I'm working on a feature film also with Corpus Christi producers. That is my feature film debut as a director.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, that's really
amazing.
cool.
Congrats.
And while working on it, thanks a lot. It's really cool and very exciting as a film, also as a project. But it's I feel that I don't need those 6 years of just trying to figure out what I'm even doing, but I still need a few years, and that's why I try to work even, for example, in the breaks on the screenplay, and even these breaks when we're waiting for some kind of new feedback or new decision from some other, from platforms and all of this. I try to always do something with the story and have a different take on it, or suddenly decide that maybe it's not the right direction for the exposition, for the setup, that maybe the setup should be different, or maybe something in the second act should be completely. I try to be kind of not necessarily be obsessive, but let my obsessive side also enter the equation, because I think that it just takes time. There's this quote from technically it's from Einstein, but it's not really from Einstein because he got misquoted by George Saunders, who is an American writer, and I found it today while doing the notes from his book. Basically, it says that no worthy problem is ever solved in the plane of its original conception. And I think that for me, screenwriting is like that if you have an idea, the first way of thinking about this idea cannot be the one that will make for a great film. Because the first one will be either a cliche or the anti-cliche, or it will still have to do with your kind of external position on the subject or on the theme. And you kind of have to move towards some kind of beating heart of a story through basically mostly time, I think, rather than anything else. So in that sense, I would still kind of I'm a slow writer, but now it's, I think, probably more like 2 years or 3 years for a feature film and not 9. But now maybe I already have, not necessarily a professional expertise, because I don't really believe in that, and I always feel like a newcomer. I always feel that I'm learning how to write with each new project.
How's the change to writer/director been for you? How have you found that process?
It's interesting because it was actually harder than I imagined, because basically when you cooperate with a director who is not you, And if they are nice, and I was lucky to work with Janek Komasa, with whom we've had a very, very nice relationship, and he really wanted that's actually what made me want to become a director, but not the usual writer's story of, I'm writing such great films, but then they suck because the director butchered them. So now I have to be a director to make good films. Not at all. For me, it's almost the opposite. I feel watching him work on my films, on the films that I've written, and seeing how he approaches the story and the details and all of this that I've created, but with a fresh, out view and with a fresh perspective, it really made me want to be a director, because I realized that, wow, it's what I'm doing is just the beginning. One could say very important, but the beginning of a trip that happens there. And I want to be a part of that experience because it looks even better than writing.
Sure.
More stressful, perhaps. But at the same time, I was... so anyways, every time he wanted to change something, especially something major in one of the films that we've made together, especially with Corpus Christi, because after years and years of me working on it, and me also who originated the whole idea and the different versions of it and research and all of this, I had this kind of a special position. He was a little bit afraid sometimes, so he always asked whether he could do this or that, and this was very... So basically, nice. He was killing me. Yeah, he was killing the author still. Sometimes he had to, but softly. It was a soft homicide, and I have discovered while shooting my short film of 30 minutes running time quite recently, like a year ago, kind of, that it's way harder when you need to kind of commit suicide. Like, it's easier to be murdered by somebody else, but when you're the director, but you're also the writer, it was way harder for me to, in one particular scene, to take this decision. I still took it, and it was a very good decision for the film to change something completely after, half a year of making sure that everything is in place and all of the dots are connected and all of the arcs are, and then something just was not working on the film set. There was a problem that I couldn't identify, I couldn't solve, I couldn't, do anything about it other than gather all of the actors. It was a big scene of like everybody, kind of the climax basically of the film. So a super important part, and it was an intense scene filled with a lot of emotions and stuff. And I basically gathered the actors and I told them after 2 hours of shooting the scene that I'm really sorry, but I am taking the decision. We're not doing it this way. Wow. We need to figure something out because this is not working. And this is nobody's fault. If anybody's fault, it's my fault. But let's not even
let's not go there.
Yes, let's go there. Let's just figure it out. And maybe instead of you doing this, you do that. And we were just, brainstormed, and the final product for me, it was really nice. So then I knew after, but I didn't know that until the editing room that it was the right decision. So for the rest of this film set, I had this horrible feeling of horrible. It wasn't horrible. I still had immense fun while working on the film, but it was a difficult feeling for sure. Of I have kind of broken my own trust, or I have kind of, I don't know, in a way I killed my writer. So I did not care for what my writer parts had worked on for so many months, and it was interesting as a process. This was the first time that I understood that this can happen this way.
Wow. That's an amazing story, actually. Yeah, you're almost going to war with a complete other side of yourself there, but you have to collaborate, and yet you have to make those tough choices. Yeah. You've got one cap on, right? You've got the writer hat on, then you've got the director hat on. It's completely different roles.
Yeah. And you need to be ruthless towards your own material, which, as we all know, no matter how mature and we are, no matter how many years in therapy we spend, that it's the hardest when you're looking at your own work to say, no, this kind of sucks, like nothing
Yes.
personal, but
Yeah, truly.
so
But we've
it's
already said. I mean, it's remarkable that your very first feature film script gets Oscar nominated. I think that's a big sign that you're good at this. Um, and we loved it. We watched the film in an
Mm.
old film club we were in, and we loved it so much. It's a 5-star
It was a hit.
movie for
Yeah.
me. Yeah, I
mm,
have the Blu-ray. Any movie that's 5 stars, I buy the Blu-ray. Um,
great.
and it's
That
incredible. We actually literally just spoke to Yevgeny Galperin, the composer of Corpus
yeah,
Christi, on the podcast last week.
yes,
Yeah. Um,
he's great. We haven't met in person, but we actually exchanged many messages on Facebook and
oh,
other social
lovely.
media, because it was quite it was one of the first signs that we're going into the right direction with Corpus Christi, because we actually kind of stole his music from Loveless
Really?
for a super early offline edit of the film.
As like temp
And
music?
well, like we used it as temp music, but as the temp music of like the most amazing temp music you can get.
This is it
And
now. Yeah.
and he got it. I don't remember the circumstances. Maybe already the French co-producers reached out to him, so maybe it's less of a crazy story. But maybe also I'm not sure. I need to double check. He just kind of accidentally saw it in like CNC, so like the French cinema, Cinéma National, Centre pour Cinéma National in France, that had to decide whether give us the minority funding for the film, for the post-production. And I think it's possible that he saw it accidentally and he was like, I love it. I'm going to compose something new for it. So
Oh,
this
that's
was
amazing.
actually, yeah, no matter the exact details, this was a trip for me that he saw the film, Usually the big film composers, when they see something and their music is used as temp music for something else, they don't necessarily love it, right? Because they
Right.
wrote it with certain intentions, they composed it, and it's tricky. So yeah, and he's
But they
he's
got it.
immensely
Yeah.
yeah
They're
he's
incredible.
immensely
Yeah.
talented.
They're so prolific, aren't they? Their body of work
Yeah,
across like world cinema. It's amazing.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and so you've already spoken of Jan Komasa, the director of Corpus Christi, who is excellent, and you instantly collaborated with him again on the film The Hater, which regretfully I've not seen. He has
Okay, I
since
haven't seen it in a
directed.
long time.
I mean, I'd love to. I mean, we need to. I mean, because we love Corpus Christi so much. So I'd love to see what you both did next together.
Normally, it's on Netflix. It's still available globally. So
Oh, fantastic!
yeah, it was released during COVID, and we had the opening weekend in Poland right after winning also the main award in Tribeca. So it was like, oh my God, it's going well. But the opening weekend was great. But then the second weekend it was like full on, quarantine
Oh,
and so, but thanks
typical.
to this, in a way, the film got sold in its entirety, I think, of rights to Netflix, and it was cool for me, I guess, because then I saw the completely, the opposite to Corpus Christi, which was a cinema experience, and here I can really see, for example, in Paris, in the I don't know, in the subway, I could see people watching it on their smartphones.
Oh, really?
Keeping a
Nice.
scene going somewhere else, and it was interesting also to see this, like a completely different
Yeah.
consumption in a way
Yeah.
of your work.
Interesting.
Yeah.
He's since directed his first full English language movie, right? Good Boy.
Yeah, actually, two at the
Ah.
same time. It's a bit confusing. Yeah, he made the Anniversary and Good Boy. I haven't seen those films yet, but they haven't been released yet. So one of them had just a festival premiere, and the other will have the Anniversary. So his kind of Hollywood the debut will have its premiere at the Warsaw Film Festival in a few
Oh,
weeks.
very nice.
Yeah,
Very
festival
nice.
premiere, but then it's going kind of straight to cinemas. I think it's more of a cinema film than a
Okay. Yeah, I
festival.
think Good Boy is going to premiere at the BFI Film Festival here.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
so we'll try.
possible.
Yeah, we'll look out for it. Are you still in touch with Komasa? Do you hope to work together again?
Yeah. Well, right now I'm definitely in the phase in which he's more of a mentor, like
Right.
more experienced colleague as a director, because that's what I'm focused on right now is directing my feature film. So, for example, he also collaborates with the same company, the production company that Auron Film. They made Corpus Christi. Now I'm working on my feature film debut as a director with them too. So he also has projects with them. So we've met recently, and it was very sweet to talk. But I think that in this particular phase of my life, I am. There is not that much room for collaboration with a director who's also very much interested in films more than series, because that's the other thing, that in the series world I can very easily imagine a collaboration with other directors where I would just you can write a series, and actually it can mean that you're kind of creating it if you're also the creator or showrunner or something. So because I guess that's what's the part that I'm missing right now in my life. Not anymore, but I've been up to recently, is the social aspect and the team aspect of creating a film. Writing both Corpus Christi and The Hater was amazing, but it was a very strange process in the sense that it was, on one hand, you had not the guarantee, but I guess the hope that many millions will watch it. And this is also what happened with both films. Like, the numbers were quite crazy later on. But at the same time, it was kind of more like writing a novel than anything else, So it was, I think that's the other thing that I learned through directing. That directing for me is a way it's a smooth transition from I'm just in a cave on my own and I'm dealing with everybody's feelings, even if they're super positive, towards the story that I told. And I think it's, in a way, for me, for now in my life, it's a more natural. It might change because I'm also going to be a father soon, so maybe I will be like, okay, I'm too exhausted.
Congrats!
Congratulations, sir.
So maybe I will then, I might change my mind in 5 months from now about every single thing that I said today. But for now, I have a strong inclination towards directing, especially directing films, because I feel that it's this. It's this. Actually, weirdly enough, it's this. Directing my own material is what will make me experience it becoming less and less mine gradually, right? Through being there and through kind of what I say, like killing the author myself. And it's I think it's also that's the paradox, that when you direct, you also notice and experience every single decision and micro decision and macro decision that is taken by others. So you actually see the thing that you had in mind at first become a team creation way more than if you're a writer. If you're a writer, you kind of, you feel that you've written something and, oh my God, now everybody's like spending money on it, what the fuck and stuff, but you don't really experience it in a tangible way only until, let's say, premiere or something when you actually, it hits you fully. But I think that with directing, it's way more gradual and way more tangible, that it's not yours really, like it's everybody's and nobody's. And
sorry, just one last thing before we do, because I'm just curious on that note. Do you write differently if you know you're going to direct it?
Yes. One thing that I'm struggling a bit with is that Jan had this idea that I'm, an amazing kind of wunderkid or wunderkind or whatever, like young genius and blah, blah, blah. And he really defended everything I've written with the producers a lot, For example, no, this is how, I had my first script, I think, for The Hater was like 158 pages, like super long for a screenplay of a film that was supposed to have 2 hours.
Wow.
It had a lot of detailed descriptions of class related, like things that were important for the plot and for the world. But so I definitely wrote very prolifically. Like I enjoyed the process of writing a lot,
Yeah.
and then he was actually, I think, at times defending it with the producers. And right now, sometimes I tend to write in a very like rich, thick descriptions, which is not usually done in cinema and in screenwriting. And since my film is not a slow burning film, the feature film, but it's more of a fast paced comedic. It has elements, obviously, of drama, and it's not farcical in any way, but it's definitely fast paced and funny at times. Sometimes I've gotten some of the producers ask me like, could you just keep it shorter for for like selling the actual thing purposes, because we know that and it's true that many people in the film industry don't necessarily like when there's a thick description and stuff. And it's funny because my initial instinct was like, I'll just tell the director to tell them that this is how I write. But since it's also me, I had to be like, yeah, sure, no, of course, yeah, you're right. So this is a funny, interesting difference
Very
that
interesting.
I have to defend myself or decide that I won't. And in this case, for example, I decided that I won't necessarily defend it because it's true that maybe I'm also sometimes having this, stress. The positive, I guess, stress of, okay, I'm going to have to direct it. So the moment I have a specific, detailed idea for how it should look, I should put it somewhere because otherwise I might forget it. But this is not what a screenplay should be.
Right,
And this I agree with, that the screenplay should be like evocative and should like invite you into the reality of the film, but it shouldn't be too precise and shouldn't necessarily serve as, detailed instructions for the director or for the crew and stuff. It should be it should provoke your own inspiration. So there's a fine line between the two, and I think that sometimes I'm crossing it more now that I'm going to be a director, but then I'm also less, I guess, defensive in a way about it, because nobody else defends me, so I have to kind of let go.
Fascinating. Sorry, Luke, you were going to say, yeah.
I'm sorry, because I'm going to ask you a really pedestrian question here, but what, I'm really interested in what you've been saying, and I'm wondering like what kind of advice you would give to someone who was maybe in the position you were in when you were like a few years, or even as you just come to finish Corpus Christi, like someone who has maybe an idea they really like and something they've been putting their heart and soul into, and how they can actually break into the industry with it.
I think that be patient. Really, that's my best advice for, I guess, any phase in creative life and career, because I think that any situation for me in this industry, in this particular maybe role of a writer, but writer director as well, it requires a shitload of patience, because like you need to trust that it's going to happen, and if this won't work out, something else will work out. You need to kind of really trust that it's worth it, and it's difficult sometimes to trust that it's worth it. And it's funny because just because it happened once, that's also what I learned. For example, with Corpus Christi, and then even with The Hater, like it doesn't change anything deep inside you, because every time you start a new story, you have this little voice in your head that is actually probably kind of justified of, won't I just waste 5 years of my life on this story? Like, because it will turn out that there is nothing in it. But the thing is that the paradox is that there is always something in it. Like, you just need to see what's there, like if it's I believe that if there is a story that irks you or tickles you or like makes you want to develop it and explore it, it's because there is something there, and particularly specifically for you to discover, and nobody else will discover this story. Then that's the really cool thing about I think writing, and particularly maybe screenwriting, that then it gets very teamworky and public and stuff. But in this initial aspect, it's also very specific to you as the author. So this patience will really pays off. But by patience, I don't necessarily mean, for example, work on something all the time. I would say like take breaks from the material, definitely, and share it. I would say early with good friends, but quite late usually with the producers. Usually when I send something to producers and say, "Oh, this is just this idea that I had," I've already shared it like a few months earlier in another version with friends, or just printed it out myself. And like I kind of always not necessarily hide this backstage, but so I think like also share strategically, but not too early, because it can also be discouraging, I think. And when it comes to whom to approach, this I'm not so sure about, but I would say that because it depends on the context of the industry, but at least in Poland, it's good to, if you're a writer, I think it's better to approach producers rather than directors. Network with producers more than with directors. I was lucky to also, and kind of privileged, and to have a creative producer who was a father of a friend of mine with whom I went to high school, actually, whom I could approach like this, and he became the creative producer of Corpus Christi, and he was like the first person on the project. And but I know also many other cases similar like that, without any, pre-existing connection, where actually the writer who reaches out to a producer has a higher chance of making the film that he or she wants to make than if they reach out to a director, or, for example, an early version of an idea, because sometimes it can then get murky. And, for example, in Corpus Christi, we first worked. After a few years of me working on my own, like 6 years, I started working with him. And then we made a casting for the director. We picked Janek Komasa for the project. So it was a very, very nice process. And if you can recreate it, I think as a writer, it's the golden standard in a way, because you also feel safer, and you start the relationship also with the director, which can be, I think, for many writers a rocky one. Not for me, fortunately, up to today. But you already started with a natural mediator of the producer, who will defend everybody's interest, but also becomes the third person in this triangle.
That's great. Awesome. Use what you know, use who you know, be targeted and focused in who you know, and be patient. That's great advice, Mateusz. Yeah. All right. Well, then I guess we'll wrap it up there, and we'll let you go. I want to thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure.
Thanks a lot. And it was really cool.
Hey, as a filmmaker myself, it is truly inspiring to hear your story as someone who has produced such great work right out of the gate, and been taken to the very highest levels of this business as you can go, and very early in your career. So it's fascinating, and we will definitely be keeping tabs and watching whatever you do next. That's for sure. For sure. As soon as this directorial debut comes out, you best believe we'll be watching it. So thank you, Mateusz. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys, and good luck with the podcast and everything else.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, folks, that will be all for this episode. Thank you, Luke.
Thank you.
I'll see you on the next one, sir.
See you on the next one.
Episodes are composed and edited by Stefan Krieger. Look for more of his music at stefan-krieger.com. Like, rate, and subscribe if you like what you're hearing. We have plenty more for you to come. Once again, a massive thank you to Mateusz, looks at his notes, Pacewicz. If you haven't seen...
Nailed it.
If you haven't seen Corpus Christi, I recommend you stop what you're doing and watch it now. We will see you next time on Phoenix Cinema Podcast. Bye for now.